Hello, beautiful souls. Today, I want to blow your mind, and the only reason I think I will blow your mind is because when I learned what I'm about to share with you today, my mind was blown. Today, we're going to talk about duality, the concepts of light, darkness, good and bad, and why they are an illusion. And I guess I want to start by saying that I was a bit confused in the last years of my life, where I've become more and more aware of this spiritual existence, more and more aware of the fact that we are spiritual beings living in this reality, in this 3D reality. And I heard so much about oneness. I even felt oneness so many times, especially at certain points in deep meditation. I heard the concept of duality being an illusion, but I never really grasped how it all fell into place. I've also been hearing a lot lately, and I think it's been more and more popping up in social media about how spirituality can become toxic, or positivity can become toxic. And I don't know if I'll be able to get into that in this episode, but I do think it has something to do with what we're going to talk about, and I do think it's a perspective thing. It's not so much that that certain teachings are not conducive to higher states of being. It's just how we absorb those teachings and how we understand them and how we implement them in our lives. But let's talk about light versus dark. So this is like something that we grow up with very innately. It's something that we come into the world and we start learning that there's light and dark, that there's good and bad, right? A child grows up and you can you're behaving well, you get a prize, it's good, or you're not behaving well, or no, we don't do that, and you might be punished. Those things are changing. The whole parenting paradigms are changing, luckily, but there's still very much this concept of this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, this is a person that is doing well in their lives, this is a person that's not. And I think in the beginning, when we look at things that way, because we've always been exposed to the world in that binary fashion, it's almost impossible to imagine a world without this division. It's almost impossible to imagine a world without duality, because it's literally the way we've always been trained to divide everything we see into good and bad, or even from a personal point of view. Whenever you see something, it's like I either like it or I don't like it. I'd like for that to be in my life, or I wouldn't want that. You get it, right? There's this very ingrained light and darkness theme in our lives. Now, let me debunk that for you. How did I learn about debunking this? How did I learn about this being an illusion? As I said before, I had heard about it a million times, but when I finally grasped the illusion of it all was through Matías de Stefano. He has a show on Gaia. I'm gonna forget the name now, but I will write it in the description below. And I'm not like a sponsor for Gaia or anything. I wish if Gaia hears this, you guys can let me know and I'll be a sponsor for you, because Gaia is amazing. It's like Netflix but for spirituality. In his show, Matías de Stefano explains that he has been remembering past lives since he was very young, and basically the show goes through all of the dimensions, and he explains all of the dimensions and how the universe and consciousness started from one dimension and how it was expanded into all these different dimensions. At some point, he goes into explaining why there is this light and darkness way of thinking on Earth. And he also explains that it is only on Earth, that it is not something that other planets have. It might sound crazy to you that I'm talking about other planets and stuff, but he talks about having experiences in other planets that he remembers very clearly, and they were other planets that were at a very high level of consciousness. As I remember, he explains in one planet I think they didn't have a body, they were light beings, and their whole purpose was to explore consciousness in the life and understand it. So what he says about Earth is that Earth has the particularity of being sort of ruled by the sun. The sun is such an important part of Earth, and it's what makes life happen. It's what makes life possible, right? We learn since we're very little that plants happen because of photosynthesis, because of the sun and the air and the soil, and that gives us oxygen, and that's why we can breathe, and that's why life is that's why life is possible on this planet. I'm not a science major or anything, but I think that's how it goes. So he talks that since the very beginning of life on this planet, so you can think of like unicellular organisms, right? Just like microbes and stuff like that appearing at the bottom of the ocean. And then towards evolution into other species until, the humankind. It had always been that life flourished when the sun was out. When the darkness came, there was not only no, nutrition from the sun, but there was also darkness. There was also danger that came with this darkness. It was when animals got eaten. It was when animals fell into dark holes and couldn't get out. And it was, associated to danger from a biological perspective. And the sun came out, the light was out, there was more possibility for life. There was more possibility for finding food. There was more possibility for finding safe shelter that one could stay in during the night so that, one was safe. So what Matthias explains is that it's actually a very biological thing, this light versus darkness. It's a biological knowledge ingrained deep in our cells, deep in our DNA since the beginning of life on Earth, where we learn from a biological perspective that the light is good and the dark is bad. I don't know if your mind's blown right now, but my mind was so blown just to figure this out, to just like, it's not just this construct. It's not just this like evil religious construct or human construct of this is bad, this is good. It's a biological thing where we have learned for millions of years, as living organisms, as life, that we need to go towards the light. Now, this concept, it's biological in nature and it's deep within ourselves, so we can't deny it in a way, but the thing is, it's gotten distorted. And one of the ways that we can clearly see that it's gotten distorted is through religion, and the way religion has picked up this concept and then morphed it into something that will make the human being feel trapped into a world of duality. So you have to go this way, you have to go to heaven, this is the rules that we're gonna give you so that you can go to heaven, and then these are the things that you can't do, right? You can't have sex before marriage or you'll go to hell, or you can't lie or you'll go to hell, and like a lot of these things are like very human things that we all do. So that's, I feel, a very unique and perfect representation of how the light versus darkness is morphed into something that is not useful for us, that actually separates us from our own light, from our own being. And then see, light comes out for me all the time. I use the word light, and every time I use it, I'm like, should I not be using it? But it's not important because that's just words. It makes so much sense that this illusion has been distorted and that this is a source of suffering for us. It makes sense in my mind. I think that one of the things that we have to realize right now as a human species is that suffering doesn't come in our lives from the exterior things that are going on or from anything on the outside of ourselves. Suffering comes when we reject certain aspects of our being, when we reject certain aspects of our existence. So if something is happening to us, it's not that thing that is happening to us. That thing might be painful. That thing might bring emotions. But that thing doesn't bring suffering until we reject that thing and say, I would rather be without this thing. And then we suffer because that's not the case. So let me give you a very clear example that if you've watched other episodes of my podcast, you will maybe have come across, which is a chronic disease. Having a chronic disease is the thing that has most made me suffer in my life. But it came to a point where I realized that my suffering came from having this huge attachment to needing to change my health. Having this need to eliminate this experience of not feeling healthy, not feeling energetic with my life, because I thought that I was missing out on my life, because I thought that it was just ruining my life and I needed to get rid of that. Now, yes, when I let go of that attachment, it's not that I immediately became healthy or that, it wasn't hard anymore. But the more that I work towards accepting this illness in my life, the more that I've actually been able to be at peace with myself, the more I've been able to enjoy life, and consequently, the more I've been getting healthier. So I really think that the separation, the suffering in our lives is caused by rejecting this darkness, by this idea that there's parts that are not good of being human. And we can see it so much in so many things in our society. Like, for example, crying. Like the other day, I love my mom because she is, always trying with my son to better her parenting in a way, her grandmaing. And she always tells me, like, I wish I would have known this when you were little, like the way you're approaching parenting. But I don't care about that. What I love and appreciate so much from her is that she is like taking the time to learn now. She didn't have the consciousness before. Nobody was teaching her before, but she is learning now and applying that with my son, which is the best feeling. And sometimes I feel bad because I'm constantly telling her like what not to do, but I like that she's open and is receiving it. And so one thing that I said today, because I heard her talking and she's like, you fell down and you were so brave, you didn't cry. And it's not like the most terrible thing to say, but I was just reminding her like, hey, let's remember that the message we want to give our children is that crying is not bad, right? And it doesn't mean that crying is good. It just means it's neutral. With so many things, it's neutral. Everything is neutral. And it's the meaning that we give to things that ends up affecting us in our lives. So if we say crying is bad, then especially for a man in our society, every time they cry, they're going to feel weak. They're going to feel bad about themselves. They're going to feel like they're doing something that is not correct, right? Whereas, what is crying? Like, literally crying is this one of the millions of ways that we can expel our energy when we feel an excess of some kind of energy, in this case, mostly emotional energy, that we can put out and release, because it's not healthy to keep it in our body. It's a way to release the energy, and free ourselves from that state. So I was reminded of just one of these things. Crying is bad, right? Or even in our own personal lives, like if we're not at the point where we think crying is bad, but still when we wake up and we don't feel positive emotion, or we're feeling sadness, or we're feeling pain, or even we're feeling like lost in our lives or a little bit depressed, the first thing we do is we judge ourselves for it, or we say, I shouldn't be feeling this. We've been taught all our lives that there are good emotions and there's bad emotions. I always bring this example from when I was an elementary teacher, and I remember having like posters where I would ask the kids how you're feeling, and I don't think it was like completely bad or anything, but there was this, here's the thing, there were the posters, they were showing faces with all the emotions, and I think that's really positive because it was teaching the kids, identify your emotion. And it's nice to identify your emotion, but the thing is that there was a green poster, there was a yellow poster, and there was a red poster. And so red is bad, right? Red is stop. And red was angry and, frustrated and all the things that, hello, all of us feel these things. Why are we going to feel bad when we feel them, right? So bad emotions. Also, dark periods of our life, like if we're going through something deeper, like depression, or we lose our jobs, or someone in our family has a health issue, or even leaves this plane, and we have these deep moments of density and going through dark periods, it's bad, right? Well, today I want to challenge that thought, and I hope I've already challenged it for you with this basis that the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, the light and the darkness are a biological thing, but they're not meant to be directing our life. They're not meant to be the meaning of who we are and how we live our lives. It's just a biological thing where we identify that the sun is a life-giving force for us. But the thing is, like, it's also important to understand that we're no longer in that survival mechanism. We've evolved to a point as a human race where, you know, we have technology and we have light when there's darkness. So we have to transcend that duality. It's time to transcend that duality where we can realize that duality served a purpose for us. But right now is the moment of oneness and of realizing and coming back to ourselves and realizing what that oneness is, and that is who we are. So we suffer when we reject aspects of ourselves. What does this mean? What does this mean for us? What's the opposite that we can do instead of rejecting aspects of ourselves? So for me, and what it's meant in my journey that I think has been mind-blowing in the effect that it has for me, is that we realize that the darkness and the light are one. Okay, lightness and dark are one. We can't be one without the other. Your life cannot be happy moments after happy moments after happy moments, because you came to this earthly plane to expand your consciousness, to live certain experiences, to learn about who you are, and hopefully by the end of the experience to come back to yourself and realize that you are God. And so that can only happen through density. Density pushes you into light. You go into another cycle of density, and it's a circular motion where you keep uncovering aspects of your own darkness, or you keep working with your own darkness, leveling up to a higher state of being. And I just want to mention, this is the way I see it, okay? This is really how I understand it in my own life. That's all I am communicating here. But it seems like a circular motion of density and then expansion. What would happen to me before, and what I think is what causes suffering, is when you get to that dense period, you start judging it and you feel there's something wrong. Whereas now that I can understand myself as a dual being, but at the same time that means that I'm one, that darkness and light are one, really, that they can't exist without the other, is that when I feel density, when I feel myself in something that I in the past would have considered wrong or bad, I can remind myself that I am in a period of expansion, and that same density is what's going to propel me into the next level. And what that does is that it eliminates resistance, it eliminates any judgment towards anything, and it allows that density to be so much lighter, actually, than what it would have been if I would have attached to it and tried to eliminate it, because what we focus on grows. So if I focus on the fact that I'm feeling a certain way and I want to get it out of my life, then that's just gonna attach myself to that state of being. It's gonna grow. But if I say, oh wow, like I'm feeling dense, I wonder what I'm being asked to expand, or how I'm being asked to expand right now, which is a question I often ask myself, then it all feels like it's meant to be. It all has a purpose. Everything we go through has a purpose, and you can actually step back from being the ego and being this person that is trying to control all of this, and step back and watch life unfold through you. And you can notice that whenever you step back, you'll watch the density transform you. You'll watch the density just bring your awareness to different things, different truths that maybe you weren't paying attention before. And just through that awareness, you'll have a leap and you'll have an expansion. So for me, the one thing that I've realized that has been very, very deep is that love is not really this like glittery feeling, is not really this high vibe. Like, it is high vibe, but the way we think about like high vibe, good vibes only kind of thing. What love really is a frequency. And the frequency of love is not closer to what you would call romantic love. The frequency of love is actually closer to what you would think of as unconditional love and acceptance. So, when in your life you can accept everything that comes your way, both in the exterior reality as what you see happening in the world around you, what you see in your external circumstance, but also in your interior reality with how you feel and the thoughts that are coming to you, when you can accept all of that without wanting to for it to be different and without trying to change it, then that is when you can feel coherence, and when you can feel oneness, and when you can feel this frequency of unconditional love. Because then you would have realized that darkness and light is one thing, that you are made of both. Hi again, beautiful soul, and thank you for staying until the end of this episode. Something you may know or may not know about me is that I am a human design specialist. If you are interested in using a tool that will give you access to your soul's blueprint so that you can explore your own truth in your own way and tap into a higher state of being, a more aligned life, a more abundant life, then find out more about working with me in the links attached. Sending you so much love.